Listen, I know we're not getting the Witch Warper in Pathfinder 2e. All I'm saying is, I just really want to play a Witch Warper, and at this point I don't care what system I play it in. Today, let's have a more serious conversation about the possible classes that are going to be dropped in the upcoming Pathfinder 2e playtest on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller who is low-key trying to unleash skittermenders on the world of Golarion. I regret nothing. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today, we're going to be taking a more serious look at the playtest announcement that Paizo made, where there's going to be 2 new playtest classes coming out for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This past Monday, Paizo put up a blog post announcing that they're going to be dropping a playtest for 2 new classes for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and that playtest will be running from mid to late September to mid to late October. Paizo didn't give us very many more details about which classes are going to be dropping for this playtest, and the reality is they're probably saving that information for Gen Con. They probably want to make that a special announcement as part of Gen Con this year. And that means we have this window of time where fans of Pathfinder get to speculate on what the possible classes are that Paizo might be playtesting next month. Now, I already did a silly shorts video, and if you really want to check that out, I guess I'll throw a link up here. But today's video is going to be a more serious conversation about what I think the possible classes for this playtest might be, or actually the more interesting conversation, what the subject matter surrounding the possible playtest classes could be. So real quick, I want to give a shout out to Phil Juthman. He was one of the guys that commented on a community poll I put up about this very topic, and one of the things he said on this subject actually matches very closely with my opinion on this matter, that the context of these 2 new playtest classes is probably the more interesting subject matter, and the classes themselves, while they are certainly important and interesting, are probably just a way for Paizo to hype up some of the material that they plan on releasing next year. By the way, smart move Paizo, I like how you're doing this. Consider the last 2 playtests. The Magus and the Summoner were associated with the Secrets of Magic book, and the Gunslinger and the Inventor were associated with Guns and Gears. Both of those books corresponded to very particular styles of play that groups might be interested in, and in both instances, the playtest classes that we were testing out were a way of supporting that style of play. It seems very probable that Paizo is doing the same thing here. That whatever these 2 classes might be, there's a real probability that they're going to be a supporting element of Paizo expanding upon a particular style of gameplay or a particular niche of Pathfinder 2e that maybe hasn't seen as much support up until now. Now, obviously, I do not work for Paizo, I have no insider knowledge, and so anything that I say in this video is pure speculation, which is why your minds will all be blown when it's actually the Witch Warper. I have not given up this fight. But let's talk about some of the possible books that Paizo might be considering, and the playtest classes that could go along with those books. Let's get started. Alright, so I want to start by talking about my "is Paizo trolling us" suggestion for possible playtest classes. When Paizo released the blog about 2 new playtest classes this year, they used pretty much the exact same blog from last year, including the artwork. And that artwork last year was a gigantic red herring. A lot of people saw that picture and they thought that Paizo might be going for a martial or warlord style class. And then that picture had nothing to do with the gunslinger and inventor that we actually got. So naturally this year, when Paizo threw that exact same picture up, a lot of people immediately started saying that that picture would have nothing to do with whatever these two playtest classes are, and there's a real possibility that that's actually the case. But I do not put it past Paizo and the sense of humor I have seen from several of their employees for them to actually be running with the idea that so many people guessed last year. I think that a Warlord style class is actually something that could fit pretty neatly into Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and let me explain why. In Pathfinder 1st Edition, there was a series of books called the Ultimate Books. You had books such as Ultimate Magic that deep dived into different magical options inside of the game, and then you also had books such as Ultimate Combat. Ultimate Combat took a serious look at the martial side of the game, taking a look at warfare and vehicles inside of the game, siege weapons, tactics, all kinds of topics like that. And if I'm being completely honest, I think that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is in a good place to have an expansion on that kind of topic. A Secrets of Warfare style book is actually something I think Pathfinder 2e could use, and that would be a welcome addition to the system. Think about it. We got troop rules in Bestiary 3, and we've already seen some teases about more vehicle options and, of course, gunnery options from Guns and Gears. There are a lot of small elements already floating around that could be associated with warfare or military-style games. And a commander, martial, warlord-style class would be a really good fit inside of the system. You know, at the moment we do have an archetype from the APG that allows for that kind of character, and you could probably build a bard that could do similar things, but a class dedicated to the battlefield commander archetype I think could be an interesting addition. And so I am willing to go out on a limb and guess that Paizo might be trolling us by dropping the same picture 2 years in a row, because I think that a Warlord style class is actually something that would be a good fit in Pathfinder 2e right now. Another callback to 1st edition would be the book Ultimate Intrigue. This book was built around social encounters. This book was built around like high society and mystery style play. It was a fantastic resource if you wanted to move your game away from just dungeon crawls and battle maps, and if you really wanted to have more social intrigue at your gaming table. Now there is a problem if Paizo is considering a Secrets of Secrecy, I guess we'll call it, in that there is no clear contender for which class or classes they might be developing for that kind of book. In 1st edition, the Vigilante was the class that was introduced in Ultimate Intrigue, and in Pathfinder 2e, they have turned the Vigilante into an archetype instead of a base class. And if I'm being honest, I genuinely believe that the Vigilante is better as an archetype than as a base class. The 1e Vigilante was nice, but I really just think the 2e archetype for Vigilante is a better fit for that particular character concept. But that doesn't mean that I'm ruling out this kind of book. Credit to my wife for this one. She actually pitched the idea that if Paizo wanted to do a social intrigue focused book, that a class such as Spy could be a natural fit. Much like the Warlord previously discussed, the Spy class would be a new option, a new class, and an interesting thing to offer players. So if Paizo were to offer something like that, I would definitely be interested in what they might come up with. So for the next gap in Pathfinder 2e that Paizo might be trying to fill, I want to focus on a more mechanical consideration. Right now, I feel like the Arcane spell tradition has a lot of support. And the Divine spell tradition is a little bit weaker, but I still feel like between the Cleric and the Oracle and the multi-tradition classes out there, that the Divine tradition has decent representation at the moment, but I do wish that the new Primal and Occult traditions had a stronger showing in terms of class support in Pathfinder 2e. Let's be honest, I would really like to see some more primal and occult classes, and that's going to bring me to my first possible book concept, which is a throwback to a late Pathfinder 1e book, Ultimate Wilderness. Now, I doubt Paizo would go for a purely wilderness-themed book. I feel like the theme of wilderness might be too narrow for an entire book, but I think Paizo could do something to the effect of Secrets of Exploration. And yes, if you haven't noticed, right now I'm just running with Secrets of as the title for every book that Paizo is going to do, even though Guns and Gears totally proves that that is not their pattern at all. If Paizo has any intention of opening up the world of Golarion to more than just the Inner Sea region, and I think we've had a few hints that they're moving that way, then a Secrets of Exploration book could be a really good way of kind of setting the stage for expanding on their primary setting, the world of Golarion. Secrets of Exploration could expand on vehicle rules, expand on other forms of travel, could cover a lot of the wilderness topics that were in Ultimate Wilderness back in 1e, and could even tie in nicely to a lot of the stuff that they're doing with the Pathfinder Society in the Golarion setting. So I definitely think that there is material for a Secrets of Exploration book, and that would be a perfect setup to bring back a first edition class, which is the Shifter. Now, the Shifter was primarily a martial class in 1e, but I think it would be really easy to reimagine the Shifter as the primal equivalent of the Magus for 2nd edition. We don't really have a class that fits that niche for primal magic, and I think it could cover a lot of the same ground that the Shifter class did in 1st edition. It might even cover some new ground that the 1st edition version of the class missed. So Shifter could be a good way to highlight exploration options and expand support for the primal tradition in Pathfinder 2e, and that's something I would be happy to see. But, speaking of exploration, that kind of brings up a topic that we've skipped over. So far, we're assuming that the classes that Paizo is going to playtest are going to be a part of their mainline book series, and we don't know that. Yes, all of the classes they've released so far are associated with mainline books, and we haven't seen any class support from their setting books, but there's nothing that says they can't do a setting book that also has class options in it. The Mwangi Expanse, which dropped not too long ago, was over 300 pages. It was a giant book. And if they plan to continue doing these giant setting books, then they have the page count necessary that they could release new class options in a setting book. Now, I'll be honest, I kind of got this idea from NoNat1 in his video talking about this subject, but where he was looking at potential classes through a mechanical lens, one of the things he said actually made me look at these possible classes through a storytelling lens, and that made me realize that Paizo could totally be dropping content for Tianjia. Think about it. The Dragon Empires would be a perfect setting for dropping classes such as the Samurai and the Ninja. If you wanted to retool those first edition classes, and there was definitely some popularity for both of those classes, having a setting book dedicated to the Dragon Empires would very easily allow you to drop things like the Samurai and Ninja and do it in an in-world way. You could have a Lost Omens book that is more than just a setting book. It could also literally give us some class options, and those class options wouldn't feel so random inside of the game. And this thought process of a setting book being a possible source for these playtest classes, that helped me figure out a possible solution to a class that I'm excited to see, but I didn't know how Paizo was going to do it. I think most people would agree that the Inquisitor is the most requested class for Pathfinder 2e. Me personally, I would have loved to have seen it as a cleric doctrine, but whether you do it as a cleric doctrine or as a full class, people want the Inquisitor. When I did the poll on my community tab, by far Inquisitor was the most common result. People want to see the Inquisitor, but how would they do it? It's clear Paizo wants whatever classes they do to fit well within the structure of whatever books they're publishing, which means that Inquisitor is not something they're just going to drop randomly. But it seems very unlikely that Paizo is going to do an entire book just on the subject of religion because they already have Lost Omens, Gods, and Magic. It seems unlikely that they would release another religion book so close to that one. And that leaves me with the dilemma of where would they actually put the Inquisitor? Well, if they did a setting book for a region such as Ustalav, which is all about classic Gothic horror, the Inquisitor is a perfect fit for that. And I'll just throw this out, it doesn't specifically have to be Ustalav and Gothic horror. You could just be pulling something like 1E Horror Adventures as well for this. Inquisitors would fit in those style of games really well, and if Paizo wanted to support that style of play, that would be a very easy way for them to both offer a class that a lot of people want to see and expand on a style of play that we don't have much in the way of rule support for at the moment. Also, it's worth noting that if they did an Ustalav setting book or a horror adventures style book for Pathfinder 2E, not only would Inquisitor be a good fit, but another popular request, the Occultist class, could also drop really well into a product like this. So if Paizo has decided to associate Playtest Classes with a setting book, it's actually a little bit easier to figure out what both of the Playtest Classes might be. But those are my thoughts. Obviously I have no insider knowledge, and so this is speculation and guesswork at its finest. I wasn't even expecting to make this video. I'm not sure when I'm going to be putting this up on my channel. I've got to find a slot for it quick, so it'll be slightly relevant. But let me turn the conversation over to you. What classes do you think Paizo might be dropping? And more importantly, what books or what type of content do you think might be surrounding those classes? What is Paizo doing to expand their game? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, like it and share it. Subscribe to the channel. I enjoy your comments and I appreciate the support that I get from you. Also, feel free to check out my Discord and Patreon, both with links in the video description. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.